What you're about to see is a remote viewing session in which the target is President Xi Jinping of China. There are two focuses and they are different points in time. The first is November 2023 and the second focus is December 2023. So we're interested to see if there's any change in his feelings over a period of time. Now, there are two concerns in this target as well. The first concern is the relationship between the two wars in Ukraine and the Middle East and the possibility of using military force to capture Taiwan. And the second concern is simply the possibility of waiting instead of using military force to capture Taiwan. So we're interested to see if there's been any change in President Xi Jinping's thinking with regard to the use of military force in respect to what's going on in the world elsewhere, such as the wars in Ukraine and the Middle East. Now, the remote viewer does not know what the target is. So when you see the remote viewer describing the data, the remote viewer will not know what you now know. But after the remote viewer has described the data completely, then the remote viewer will be told in the target reveal what the target actually was, and then you get to see the response or the reaction from the remote viewer of knowing what the target actually is, plus the discussion is interesting. So let's go right now to the actual remote viewer and hear what the remote viewer found with respect to this target. All right, Aziz, welcome. This is Deep News. And you've done your session, and let's go over it. I have a paper copy with me here, and you can talk about it. I'm just sort of going into the session and sort of looking at what you have. Basically, you have just just a standard environment, page 4 and 5. You want to just basically describe?
Yeah, so it seemed like I was just seeing an urban area. It seemed like there were structures inside of subjects inside of a structure, some mountains in the background. Just seemed like a standard urban area. And the immediate area where those subjects were seemed like an indoor, regular topography landscape. I mean, it just seems like they were inside one of these structures. And when I started to focus in on page 7, I started to focus in on the target, the center of the target, and I went to target subject A, and that subject seemed to have a lighter skin, an older face. Everyone seemed to have formal attire on for the most part. And this guy, subject A in particular, had sort of this dark bluish black formal attire with some whiter hues, but it was mostly those darker hues that were dominating his attire. He seemed like he had hair on his head. It was thinnish gray hair, sort of rounded forehead in the front. And he seemed like he was an older male subject. He had a raspy grayness, gruffness in his voice, sort of a rounder stomach. Felt like he was with those other subjects and sort of pointing at things. Feels like he's a little tired, not really super engaged in the moment. But yeah, it seemed like this moment wasn't exactly a major thing for him. It seemed like he was not really mentally in like a hardcore working mode at this point in the target, but that was pretty much his mind. Yeah.
Then you went to focus 1 on page 8, and you did a deep mind probe, both in general and then with concern 1. So why don't you tell us about what you found in his head?
Yeah, so basically, generally I just picked up that he wasn't in a major working mode, but when it came to concern 1, that sort of tenseness appeared in his throat, sort of like his throat was sort of clenching up, and he had sort of a haste to his breath, sort of like breathing heavy a little bit. He didn't really seem very comfortable thinking about concern 1. It seemed like he was perspiring, shaking his head. It just seemed like he was not having a good time. He was looking at the ground as other subjects were speaking to him. I really just didn't feel like subject A liked concern 1 at all. I got the feeling that subject A sort of looked at concern 1 in the same way that a kid would be when he's being told to do his homework and he's kind of reluctant, he doesn't want to do it. And it didn't really seem like he was doing anything particularly important other than this. So it seemed like, it kind of felt like, using that metaphor, if the kid was told to do his homework and he wasn't really doing anything else important, but he still just really was reluctant and he didn't want to do his homework. That's kind of how Subject A felt when it came to Concern 1. I mean, it looks like the concern sort of ruins his mood, spikes his stress, and he just doesn't want to deal with it at all.
Okay. All right, then you continued with that on your page 9, but that was with Concern 2.
Yeah.
So moving then to Concern 2, what was your sense then?
So when I started probing Subject A's mind with regards to Concerns 2, I felt like Subject A is kind of lazy. I started to feel like he had to deal with Concern 1, and so he didn't really like it. But I didn't feel like this was exactly what was going on with Concern 2. I didn't get that sort of reluctant energy with Concern 2. His mind felt a bit more open, he felt a little lighter, felt a little happier, and he felt like he was sort of in a good mood when he thought about this concern in particular. Subject A, in general, I said before, he felt like sort of this lazier person. He kind of feels like a lazy security guard who just doesn't want to do his job and wants to sort of laze around all day. It feels like Concern 2 is this sort of light that he looks at, and this light has, if I sort of probe into his mind and I sort of look at Concern 2 like it's this apparition, it seems like Concern 2 is this bright light and it has multiple subjects inside of it. And it seems sort of like he looks at this experience favorably. He likes looking at this light with these other subjects inside. He looks upon them favorably. He looks upon the scene favorably. And it just seems like he feels more empowered when he looks at it. It feels like this light wraps around him, goes inside of him, and he just feels like a bigger, stronger, better person, larger person. And Concern 1, just to compare, Concern 1 feels like it's a burden. It just seems like it anchors him down. They're polar opposites in his mind.
Okay, interesting. Okay, well, actually, this is everything that you just described is in the context of Focus 1 for this target.
Okay.
So you then move on your next page to the same thing, but Focus 2.
Yeah,
so
things changed.
Focus 2 starts with a deep mind probe again, but this is Focus 2. What's his state with Focus 2?
Yeah, so Focus 2, things were different. At Focus 1, Subject A felt like he was this lazier guy. He felt like he was at a lazy cocktail party. He was just something along those lines. But Focus 2 feels there's no party vibe. There's no relaxed being sort of lazy and grumbling at certain Concern 1 or whatever. It seems like Focus 2, Subject A is stressed out. Focus 2, Subject A is mentally frantic. I feel like he's shuffling around, moving papers around. He's in a very unorganized and hectic manner. And it feels like he's looking up from these papers and he feels sadness, this sense of loss. It feels like he's helpless almost, and he's sort of giving up. He's out of options. It seems like his larger belly just seems more noticeable at this point because he's not really standing with poise in any respect at this point. He's sort of hunched over and he's like just stressed out, holding his head, just sort of moving stuff around. It really seems like he's having a panic attack almost. But that's pretty much what he's like, it just looking at his general mind at Focus 2.
Okay, on the next page, page 11, you go into Concern 1.
Yeah, so I don't feel like at Focus 2, I don't feel like Subject A is as annoyed or bothered by Concern 1. I just feel like he's exhausted. I feel like that exhaustion just is completely taken over a lot of his other senses. I mean, Concern 1 also doesn't feel like something is distant. It feels like it's a much bigger deal now. It's a much larger force or entity. And it's just way bigger than before. It's this massive structure, like a tower just towering over him, Concern 1. And it feels like when I dive into his mind and mentally he's looking at Concern 1, it just looks like this massive collection, just this huge group of subjects, and they have this energy around them, this red, angry energy all over them. And I deducted stuff. I deducted like protesters, because it looked like it was a bunch of subjects holding like signs and going rah, rah. They're really angry and riled up and stuff like that. And it seems like they're just a bunch of subjects dressed in sort of casual attire within this reddish energy, and it's just a massive number of them. I feel like he kind of looks at Concern One as like a big bully. He's like feeling like this giant group of angry subjects, they're like a bully to him. And he just sort of looks down in a way, sort of like shying away from looking at that. He feels very not powerful. He feels way less powerful against this concern than he did before at Focus 1. So Focus 2, he feels basically powerless and exhausted, especially when looking at Concern 1.
Okay, then on the next page, page 12, you go into, again, we're still with Focus 2 now. You go into Concern 2.
Okay, so Subject A, in regards to his mind at Focus 2, looking at Concern 2, Subject A feels like he still looks at Concern 2 favorably. He likes it. But he isn't feeling threatened or anything like that, but he kind of feels let down by Concern 2. When he looks into that light and sees the subjects in there, those multiple subjects, he doesn't feel like he's doing well, and he feels let down by them, by the energy of it. It just doesn't feel like that really worked out well for him. He does sort of look at it as a favorable thing, though. He still likes it. So I feel like when he's looking at I feel like at Focus 1, he looks at Concern 2 like it was above him, like he sort of put it on a pedestal. He was exalted by it. I mean, he looked at it like it was just a force that was above him that he respected and liked. But at Focus 2, it feels like Concern 2 is far below him. It's like a much weaker energy, and it's on or near the ground below him, and just very small in general. Looking into Concern 2 as well, if I just go into his mind and then look into the energy of Concern 2, I see a blue energy, and these subjects are sort of inside of this blue energy, much like the other group with the red energy. It seems like here, this group of subjects is smaller in numbers, not as many subjects, and they just feel like they're covered in a blue energy, and they're sad. They're facing this melancholy energy. They just seem like they're lacking a lot of energy and vigor. They're not like rah, rah, rah like the other group with the red energy. They seem like this group is not dressed in casual attire, though. This group is much more formal attire, and they're kind of like half-cracking smiles, but they're kind of like, they don't really seem like they're very energized at all. Subject A feels like Concern 2 let them down, though. It feels sort of like he doesn't have anywhere else to turn, though, so he's pretty much stuck with with this group. We'll call it Group B, with the blue hues around them. And I deducted working class versus aristocracy, meaning that I felt that Group B in this blue energy was a smaller number of subjects in formal attire. They kind of felt like an aristocracy. And the other group with the casual attire, all rah, 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 they seemed like they were in the red energy, far more of them. They sort of felt more like the working class, in my opinion. So that was a deduction, but that was where my mind was going when I was probing.
Yeah, that actually summarizes your whole session. That's very interesting. Are you ready to hear the target?
Yeah, well, it's the only thing I really will say is that Group A was just, I really want to emphasize, Group A was way bigger than Group B. When I probed into those energies, Group A having that red energy, that rah, rah, rah type of energy, they were huge. That was a huge number of subjects. It dwarfs in size the size of Group B, the formal subjects, the ones that I felt looked like the aristocracy or something like that. And Group A was the really energized, had heightened emotions, aggressive emotions, and Group B was melancholy. They were sort of downtrodden energy, and they had the blue energy. So, yeah. Anyway, that's everything. So I am happy to hear the target. I have no idea what this is about.
All right. Well, here's the target. There were two focuses. Now, the primary subject A, is President Xi Jinping of China.
Oh.
And the two focuses were 2 months. The month of November, which is when this recording is taking place, and the month of December. And so the focus 1 is when he's in November, is when he is thinking about the possible use of military force to capture Taiwan. Focus 2 is again when he's thinking about the possible use of military force in Taiwan, but to capture Taiwan, and that's November, December of 2023. And the reason this whole target became an issue is because with the Middle East war cranking up and the Ukraine war cranking up, in real terms, if military force is ever going to be used to capture Taiwan, with the United States and Western powers totally occupied with the Ukraine war and the Middle East war, there's never going to be a better time militarily to move on Taiwan, because can the United States actually handle 3 wars at the same time? Anyway, so concern 1. So these are 2 concerns that he has, and they were weighing in his mind, and we wanted to see how he was thinking about those 2 concerns, both in November and December. The concern 1 is the relationship between the 2 wars of Ukraine and the Middle East and the possibility of using military force to capture Taiwan. Concern 2 is the alternate approach, which is the possibility of simply waiting instead of using military force to capture Taiwan. So concern 1 and concern 2, it was, do we act now because of the Ukraine war and the Middle East war? Do we act now to militarily take over Taiwan? Or concern 2 is, do we just hang out and wait? And that was the 2 concerns. What do you think about, now that you know the target, what do you think about that? So focus 1 was again in November this month. Focus 2 is December. We're just assuming that President Xi is thinking about these possibilities.
Well, that's really interesting. So I definitely I got pretty much Xi's appearance all correct except for the color of his hair. I see he's slightly getting a little bit of gray hair at this corner right here, but he does not have gray hair. But I got the belly. I got his clothes. So I'm happy with I got the correct gender. So I mean I am happy with that appearance that I captured at least a little bit. But
he probably does have totally gray hair. He probably has a hairstylist that gives him color.
Oh, you think he does?
All the major politicians. President Biden has had plastic surgery and hair stuff going on. So I mean, it just happens. So probably you got the hair correct. You just saw through the dye.
I see. All right. Well, it's definitely concern 1. So concern 1 was the military option, just taking advantage of the chaos and being militarily aggressive. So that makes sense that he felt this nervousness, the perspiration, just doesn't seem like he liked it. The option of just jumping in and doing all that, the tenseness in his throat. I mean, like, even if you do want to take over a place, I mean, it's not like that's a walk in the park. It's not like that's sort of like taking candy from a baby. I mean, that is a big deal to invade another place. So
yeah, it's interesting. Your session really had him quite nervous with that possibility. So he was apparently considering the possibility and nervous.
Yeah. I mean, it felt a lot more distant at focus 1. It feels like here at concern 2, well, I'm looking here at focus 1, I sort of called him a lazy security guard. So I guess it's pretty interesting. But the waiting option, it definitely seemed like he had a lot of faith in the idea of just relaxing and waiting with the aristocracy, relaxing and waiting with these sort of formally suited subjects, and not the sort of aggressive mob that was sort of coming up later on in the session when I was looking at concern 1. But focus 2, it seemed like
that's in December.
Yeah, so it seemed like this aggressive mob of subjects, this aggressive group. I called them protesters, so I'm not quite sure. It just seems like he feels a little less powerful in this concern when it comes to the military stuff. So I don't know. It seems like, once again, that doesn't seem like something that he's too excited about. Even at focus 2, I mean, it seems like he's pretty much feeling like the masses are quite a large and aggressive force. I mean, I really not quite sure 100% how to interpret what I saw here with this just massive Group A, this massive energized and aggressively aggravated subjects. So Can you read out Concern 1 one more time, just so I can really try to put this in context?
Concern 1 is the relationship between the two wars in Ukraine and the Middle East and the possibility of using military force to capture Taiwan because of those two other wars occupying the attention of the U.S. and the Western allies.
So Concern 1 doesn't entirely focus on the military action. This group of aggressive subjects could also be actual protesters protesting the various wars that are going on either in Europe or the ones in the Middle East. There are quite a few protesters with regards to the ones in the Middle East as well. It seems like that group being so large and sort of deflating his energy in regards to this concern, because he did feel less powerful than before when he was looking at this. That might be a concern. He might be looking at the civil fallout around this and factoring that in and not feeling as emboldened by this idea. And looking at the waiting option, it seems like comparatively, given the context of these concerns that you just told me, that still kind of looks like the better option of just waiting. But he does feel let down by his constituents.
Yeah.
So that I imagine those formal subjects around him that sort of were empowering him in Focus 1, him feeling a little let down by them. I can imagine that is his constituents or his entourage of people in the political world. That's sort of my guess there. But anyway, that's a fascinating target. It's really interesting to do a deep dive into his mind like that, and it seems like we got a little bit of information of just how a world leader thinks.
Yeah, at the end of 2023. You know, the interesting thing also is there's a lot of you came up with a lot of protesting stuff going on with regard to those wars, and that's pretty interesting because if he did use military force to invade Taiwan, the press and the West, everybody would start to think of that as a super aggressive action. So, you know, it would be. It's sort of like the Israelis invading Gaza with total military force. I mean, it's a huge thing. And so if mainland China invaded Taiwan, it would be like that. It would be very, very similar to the Israelis invading Gaza. It would be a big military on the China side invading a smaller place. And there would be huge levels of casualties. And he's probably looking at that as this is probably the best time for it to happen, if it's ever going to happen. And he's probably looking at the fallout of what's happening in the Middle East and saying, do I really want that now with China, with regard to that type of fallout? Because he would be painted worldwide as the bad guy.
It seems like he's seeing a lot of negatives at the military option. If I had to guess, if I had to flip a coin, I'd say he probably won't do it. So
yeah, based on this session, actually before I even wrote up this target, I was actually thinking he might actually do it. Because militarily this is a good option for him in terms of if he's ever going to use it, because the U.S. and the Western powers are sort of occupied into other wars. But it's quite clear now it's not an easy choice for him, and he's really worried about that option. He seems to be favoring waiting.
Well, the world does not need any more wars, so that's a good thing, I guess. So it's I'm quite happy to see that. Cooler heads prevailing, I guess to say.
Also, if he invaded Taiwan, there would probably be a huge economic reaction, with regard to people doing business with China and so on. So that would be it really looks like he's sweating on this possibility. From your session, it looks like he's seeing the options because he's thinking about the options, and he's really worried that it could turn out terribly if he did it.
Yeah, no, he's definitely not happy with the idea of invading Taiwan. That definitely makes him really worry about what I would summarize as civil unrest to a very high degree that would be disempowering of himself.
Yeah, this is a very valuable session for us, and it's actually very valuable for the U.S. and Western intelligence. I hope they're watching.
Well, it's very cool. So anyway, remote viewing is a fun thing. I like doing these deep mind probes.
Okay, on to the next one.
Sounds good. On to the next one.